So this one should be a little bit more technical-sided from the dev side of things. If you'd like to introduce yourselves and what your job role entails on a day-to-day basis. If we start at the end.
I'm probably the least technical on this panel, but I'm Russ Tregenza. I'm senior sound designer, but over time I've specialized in music systems. So my day-to-day is building sort of procedural music systems, working with the composers, and just making the music awesome.
Yeah. I'm Staffan Ahlstrom, and I'm a senior VFX artist, and I mostly do special effects for weapons, the ship and FPS weapons. Yeah. So my day-to-day is like authoring those and also make sure that, yeah, always the pipeline, right? But yeah, make sure that's up and, yeah, long-lasting. Thank you.
Sorry, it happens to the best of us.
Hi, I'm Andy Nicholson, and I'm a technical designer. I suppose my day-to-day responsibilities mostly balance-orientated with ships and control stuff, so like that double-edged controversies that I like to be responsible for. That's me.
Hi, I'm Derek Senior. I'm the programming director at Foundry 42 in the UK. So my primary role is looking after all the programmers in the studio. We've got over 30 programmers in the UK. So day to day, I'm just generally looking after them, sort of working with the production team, designers, artists, just making sure that on the engineering side, you know, everything's running smoothly, everybody knows what they're doing, and yeah, just making sure everything's working well.
Cool. So again, same as the last one, because we just love to hear about the passion you guys have for the game. What has what is something you've been working on recently that you've really been putting a lot of passion into that's interested you personally?
I guess the music logic system is kind of I've been developing with coder Sam Hall over a period of about a year now. It's something we're very passionate about, and I think it's starting to really get a heartbeat and come to life in the game, where we take just what you're doing in the game, whether you're in EVA or FPS or flight or a cinematic moment. We factor in that, and then we bring in intensity based on what's happening if you're attacking a ship or a ship's attacking you, and then we have a mood parameter for if things are going well or going badly, and these three sort of vectors excuse me, form this huge grid of music that's it's active on both sides of the game, in PU and in Squadron, with beautiful music by Pedro on the PU side and Jeff Zanelli on the Squadron side. So we built these tiny little sections of music, but it become altogether, each one of these music logic sets it's about 40 minutes of music, and it's this insane grid of possible iterations and movements and transitions and stuff. And it's got a real heartbeat of its own. And when you start to play the game, it kind of predicts what's going on, and it's like an interactive cinematic scoring system it's really, I'm very proud of it, and it's working really nicely now.
Yeah, it's good to hear.
Cool. Yeah, so the latest gun I've been working on is the rail gun, and that was pretty funky because if you look at a normal, I mean, these weapons do actually exist, but they're huge, and I think they're installing them on American Navy ships. But so this is a shoulder weapon that you carry on your shoulder, and I did a first pass on it like a long time ago, and I tried to recreate it how it looks in the real world, but I ended up with like a flamethrower thing. It didn't work, but so I had a chat with Paul Jones about it, and he said like, yeah, do something blue and shiny. So, but that's one of the best parts of this job, when you can go like, okay, let's skip reality, let's do something awesome instead. And I think what we ended up is it's not entirely done yet. It's not good. It doesn't look good enough in third person yet, because we have different effects for when you're in first person mode and third person. So yeah, it will look even better in a while. But there's one more thing coming for our, like, how we do particle effects now, because so far in the game we only have CPU particles, and that means that it's the processor that deals with all particles. But now we're getting a system, so the graphics card are going to compute all that stuff. So what that means in simple terms is, like, we're going to be able to add a lot more particles, and that's going to be very, very fun to do for all the weapons. It's going to be some real cool stuff coming. Lots of sparks.
I think for myself, it's the most recent thing that I've felt passionate about. We've been working a lot towards simplifying or making the game a little bit easier to get into or play. So, like, from my perspective of being the one who did a lot of controls rejigging and remapping, and yes, I'm the one responsible for all that.
Pitchforks.
Being able to make things, essentially make, like, oh, here's an advanced mapping, here's a basic mapping, getting those to people so that they don't get, you know, hit over the head with all these complicated systems, and you know what it's like when you get into dogfighting, how hard it can be to figure out the simple basics, and that's made even worse by, I don't know, if you don't like the throttle being on the left stick of the gamepad, you're going to really, really dislike the way we've got it mapped right now. So taking the time with the expectant new players coming in for the next big release, and going back to the drawing board a little bit and simplifying some things, I find that really, really rewarding. And there's also some other functionality coming in, I don't know if I can talk too much about, that will actually simplify a lot. Or make it complicated. I don't know how you look at it. It's like, yeah.
Simple for us, complicated for you.
I'm going to say it's simpler, but you may disagree. So I'll leave it at that. It's been really rewarding doing that.
Unfortunately, yes, I mean, because of my sort of general role, I don't actually get to do any development work. So I tend to just live vicariously through my colleagues. You know, I see all the sort of great work they're doing, and think, yeah, you know, that's good. I like that. So things like, I mean, just recently, you know, put a lot of work into things that you can see, things like the mega map work, which you know, it's partly intended to improve the experience of the players, being able to get into maps quicker and just improve the flow, the game flow. But it's also a much bigger topic where it's changing the way that going forwards for the actual persistent universe, the way we stream kind of the areas in, the way you've got the different game modes in different areas and things like that, and it's all sort of creating the foundations of how we're going forwards with the persistent universe, and that's kind of also what's exciting for me. It's just creating these building blocks which then allow people to build on it and then go forwards and, you know, create the game that, you know, we're trying to create.
Cool. With Star Citizen, it's originally it was, you know, pegged with a fully realistic flight model on Newtonian physics and how it's all going to work. How close to real life are you bringing, like, most aspects of the game, and where do you draw the line for the balance between the realism and the fun?
Shall I answer that?
If you can, sure. I mean, in terms of the flight model,
yeah,
there are some restrictions that we've put in place.
Yeah, so I mean, the actual flight model is a lot of it is very much physically based. So, you know, the IFCS model, you know, it's basically taking the player's joystick input and actually mapping that to actual thruster values on the ship itself, and then that is realistically physically modelled. But then at some stage we've got these sort of more gamey things. So the ship has a top speed, for example, so it's not like real physics where you just be able to carry on sort of accelerating forever, because again that just wouldn't be any fun. So we then put some kind of reasons, sort of story reasons why you don't do that. I can't remember what they are.
Story-wise, I'm not sure.
But yeah,
balance-wise, there's probably a few reasons of like.
There's gameplay-wise.
Yeah.
So basically, what we tend to do is we start off from the very sort of realistic, physically accurate kind of modelling, and then go and see how it works and what the limitations are and how it works actually in a proper game, and then we sort of take that and then put various sort of limitations to actually make sure the game is actually fun and something that people want to actually play.
Yeah, and it's like another example is the projectile that you fire with this railgun. It's how fast does it travel? It's like a 2,000 meters per second or something.
Could be, yes.
Yeah, so when you shoot that thing,
side.
you can't see it.
Yeah.
So we're gonna add like a particle trail to it, because without that it would be. The player needs to know what's going on at some point, and then we add stuff that are not there in reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if someone misses the ship firing at you, and you can see the trail go past you know what they're shooting.
Yeah, so talking about trails, like engine trails for ships, for example. That's not realistic, but it helps a lot in space combat to see how people are flying.
Yeah, I'm always losing the enemy. I'm like, where's he going? Where are we? Oh, there we go. With alien weapons and their projectiles, they have to sound and look very different from what we're used to looking at in modern sci-fi with like the traditional guns and stuff. Everyone has this like human-based weapon systems, but now you've got things like the Banu and all their different types of weapons. How would you come up with these sounds and make them sound alien yet still kind of sci-fi?
I guess it's very difficult because it
is.
Well, real guns don't sound that interesting. Been to firing ranges before and fired AK-47s and sniper rifles and things. It's incredibly disappointing after a lifetime of video games to hear how things actually sound. They just go bang, basically.
Yeah.
I'm speaking on behalf of the other guys. We have a huge, awesome audio team, but this is just from conversations with them. I'm not a specialist in the weapon sounds. But it's kind of like a grid. You've got on one axis you need to represent the size and the intention of the weapon, and then on another axis you have the personality of the weapon. So if you have a sniper rifle and it's the biggest sniper rifle for in its class, that needs to be represented in sound design terms in every iteration, whichever species has that weapon. But at the same time, you need the character of that species. So it's kind of you're mixing the character and you're in narrative terms. You're saying this weapon is a massive, big ass sniper rifle, but you also have to say it's a Banu one. I'm not saying that's a weapon we have. This is a hypothetical. It's really about representing on these two different axes. It's difficult, but you need that language, and it takes a long time to develop a sense of scale in a sound design narrative, but also a sense of where it comes from.
It's very, very similar to some of the problems we face with balancing ship performance.
Exactly, yeah.
And you're looking at the size of the physical size of a ship,
exactly,
the size of the engines. You start thinking, oh, it should perform this much better than the other ship because of the size of the engines. But then gameplay reasons restrict you to do that, and it can be very hard to get the right feel based on visuals as well.
Yeah, and it's tough because you want every weapon to sound like the best thing in the universe, but it has to be part of a family. So it needs to have its place in a scale. So you need to you want everything to be the biggest, baddest thing ever, but you have to pull it back sometimes.
And with sounds, I've seen some sound like behind the scenes stuff for different things, and they make some sounds with some really unusual things that you wouldn't think would make these weird sounds. What's the most unusual that you've seen people like using in the office to make weird sounds?
Yeah, it gets pretty crazy. So what have we done? I mean, it's all about lateral thinking, and sound designers, after a while, you get an ear for. Just in the real world, you wander around listening to things, thinking, "Oh, that'd be great for the sound of someone getting stabbed," which is quite an unhealthy thing. I did a game years ago where I had to do the sound of someone getting their throat cut, and I just gargled some Diet Coke into a microphone, which was quite upsetting.
I do have some Diet Coke.
It's like every sound we make is like a huge like there's layers and layers and layers of crazy stuff going into it. There's things people that are like cliches people know about, but we do often use like breaking bones. We can use like ripping up celery and things like that. And in any gun, like a normal gun sound will normally be the original real-world recording of a similar gun, and then a kick drum, some white noise, an animal, a bit of sound from a seaside, or just it's like 10 things together to make it sound like what you want it to sound, not what it really sounds like. It's like I say, the real world's no fun.
Well, that's definitely eye-opening. A bit seaside in your gunshots. With CIG constantly coming up with new ships and things, how well can you tackle designing ship balance for yet undesigned ships? Because you've got a role that you need to fill, and that's still got to fit within your overall big balance chart of ships. How do you go about doing that?
It's a challenge. It took me a long time to get to grips with all of the ships that we already had in the game. And even now, I'm still finding that a challenge, and we're still a bit off where I'd like us to be. So when it comes to something in the future coming into that to fill this position, I mean, we try and classify ships as best we can based on size, based on weaponry, and then give them some kind of, the Buccaneer being the glass cannon, for example. So we call it a glass cannon, even though maybe it's not right now. And then you sort of fill in all of these blanks. So you end up with a massive spreadsheet, basically. Spreadsheets is my life right now. It's just all the different possibilities we could have. You just have to start ranking everything, and it's just a really complicated ranking system, essentially. Yeah.
And have you found any extra time where you've got this new ship come in that's caused you to rebalance a different ship for?
It's kind of continuous, yeah. Like something like the Buccaneer is this new ship that comes in. You put this glass cannon name on it, but some of the other designers also want it to be really fast. And when we've talked about like lowering ship speeds, raising ship speeds, where's the skill ceiling with all of that stuff? It's really hard, and we're still, I think, finding out the limits of what is a medium performance, what is medium agility, what is top agility, where does it stop becoming fun? Like something like the Buccaneer, where it's really hard to hit, and it should be really weak, and if you do get a few hits on it, it will go down really fast. But because it's so nimble, it kind of shoves everything out. Shoves. But yeah, so if something new comes in, you have to rejig everything, and that's a lot of the ranking that I do based around that.
Cool. Yeah. Now, obviously, we can't talk about Squadron 42, but with some of the engineering problems that you faced in designing for Squadron 42, has any of that fed back into the PU for the solutions you've come up with?
So, hard one to say really. The whole, pretty much everything that we do for Squadron 42 is actually based on things that are going to happen in the PU as well. So a lot of what we're doing is kind of almost a sort of simplified version of what you see in the PU. So, I mean, a good one that we're sort of working on at the moment, for example, is we've got this air traffic control system. So basically, it's a system which sort of controls the landing and taking off, and assigning landing pads, and or coordinating players taking off and things like that. And the PU obviously has to deal with lots and lots of players all jostling for sort of landing pads and putting you in holding patterns and things like that. We're going to have something similar that we're going to use for Squadron 42, but it's a much sort of simplified version. We don't have a lot of the multiplayer aspects and problems that you have in the PU, and we can just simplify things a lot. So there's very few things in Squadron 42 that are very sort of Squadron 42 specific. It is very much a sort of shared, and we want, obviously we want the PU and the Squadron 42 to feel the same sort of game. They don't want to be, feel vastly sort of different. So it's really when we're actually developing mechanics for Squadron 42, it's making sure that we don't just see them in a single player sort of light. We actually need to think, right, okay, we want to do this particular mechanic. How's that actually going to work also in the PU? How's that going to work, with multiple players trying to all do the same thing and that kind of thing. So it was always thinking about not just Squadron 42, but the universe. How is it going to work in the actual universe itself?
Cool. We've recently had a situation where you've changed the flight model. How would you go about then rebalancing the whole host of ships that we already have? I mean, do you have to go one by one?
Yeah.
Or?
Well, we were never quite happy with how everything. Still not happy with how everything is. So it's an iterative process anyway, and the way it changed, a lot of it was making it simpler for us to tweak as designers. So that working with John Pritchett, who's the guy who does all the coding for this and essentially designs the flight model himself from feedback from others, he simplified how we could tune the ships, which meant retuning everything, basically. And then with some slight speed changes, it's kind of, I still struggle to find the right feel for all the ships, and we're still figuring it out. So you change something, you have to change all the others, and making it, like we said earlier, where I think John covered, you have one ship that's the one that represents the ideal in this class, like the M50s, the Superstar, F1 style car. You tune for how that would feel in game. So I've spent a lot of time flying the ship around the course of some of the easy track, the hard track, and then I changed the performance based on, I was sliding out too far on this corner, or it takes way too long to stop here, so I can bring in those times. It's basically just bringing numbers down or bringing them up. With the performance stuff, I mean, once you take the complicated calculations of how all the jerk system works, the third order motion, it complicates it, but really you're just making, I want this ship to slide less. Let's solve that. And then the same with combat. You take like the F7C or the Sabre, which we wanted, and then we start ranking them against each other, and then you play it and think this ship's lasting too long, and then you speak to QA, and then you get feedback on it that way too. Spend a lot of time talking to some of the. We mentioned Renegade Squadron earlier. I don't know if you should name drop, but they are good at what they do in game, and they are good at giving somewhat salty, but generally good feedback on what makes the game so good in terms of a high skill level. So you just community feedback, QA feedback. It's a little bit of a back and forth to try and tweak things to the right position. So that's kind of how I spend most of the time, actually, is flying it in game, having combat against AI, combat against PvP, and then going, that's not good enough. Let's change. Right, we'll make the shields bigger, make the ship health lower. It's kind of just a really iterative process like that.
And that's all behind the scenes, and then we see the end result at the end of the day.
Yeah, so when something new comes in, it's like you have to start and then rejig and start this process again. And think, okay, this is now the one that should feel the most maneuverable on a racetrack. So then you start pushing other things out, and then start to panic when it starts to make really, oh no, the Aurora's terrible again. And then you start to panic and you have to fix it again.
The Aurora's supposed to be terrible.
So, yeah, some people say it's supposed to be terrible. Then when you make it terrible, they're like, I'm going to actually kill you. Yeah.
They're salty they haven't got a better ship.
Yeah.
Back in the Kickstarter days, I remember one of the backer milestone rewards was an engine tuning kit. With item 2.0 coming in with enabling lots of different interchange of torque for the different items, has that still been looked at for a feature for tuning different items individually?
Still talked about. We wonder or we worry how far away that is from ever being a reality, because it is a complicated thing. But the way the IFCS system's engineered, like if I can tweak it by just putting numbers in, we could make that an interface that you could potentially manage as a player. It's just that's obviously not going to be an easy thing to visualize for some, or like we have to decide what makes it fun and what makes it way too complicated.
I think I think it's from a technical side. It's with item 2.0, everything's in place to be able to do that. It's really just a case now of, from a design side, how do you go about exposing that? How do you actually go about getting it so the player can tune his engine? And,
we don't.
On you again.
Yeah, but it is certainly something that we, like John Pritchard's very passionate about, all this fidelity in the flight model, which he's engineered it himself mostly.
Yes, he's pretty much full on just the flight model and everything else is pretty much his baby, and what he loves doing. Yeah.
And it constantly iterates as well. We changed a lot with those afterburner cruise changes, and we still talk daily. Is this the right thing to do? We're getting all this feedback that says no, but it solves this problem, and it's kind of an ongoing thing. All of that stuff we talk about daily, so I can say that.
Okay. With Star Citizen pushing the boundaries of what we could do with current and near future hardware, is there anything that you currently can't do that you wish you could do in the near or distant future, tech-wise, with the game?
Yeah, I mean, if I would say something, it would be the GPU particles. That's the thing where the particles are computed on the graphics card, but we're getting that. So we can't do it. We couldn't do it like a couple of weeks ago, but soon we will.
And how much of an impact is that going to have on your frames per second if you shifted all that to GPU?
Yeah, that's the
doing that
beautiful
as
thing.
well?
So I think we will have a process where we gradually switch over to this new system. So we have two systems now. We have the whatever. So the frame rate would, even though we have like the amount of particles we can have with the system is just insane. But the frame drop, no, it would be cheaper, absolutely. So some people now experience like certain frame drops with huge explosions and stuff like that. A lot of that could be mitigated with this new tech.
Okay, so you could see like then performance increases rather than decreases. Okay. What are your guys' views on VR and the challenges of implementing that within the game for either graphics or sound? You've got positional sounds that you will then be a bigger key for it.
there's kind of a tradition for ambient sound design to in games for going back years now to you have a 2D sort of bed sound for each room. Where you come into a room, we just build a nice sounding 2D environment for that room, and we slap it down there, and then you have point source emitting sounds all around them for specific things. But it's not good enough for VR. It's immediately you can hear it as soon as you're in a VR environment, because your head moves, and this room with this engine sounds or whatever, nothing's happening. So weirdly, some of the things are moving with your head, and then the actual bass sound of the room isn't moving. So it's a luxury that we don't have anymore. So we, just because it's what sound designers have done for years and years, it's how we'd started with some of the environments in both PU and Squadron. So we just talked about it for a while and thought, okay, we need to deal with this now rather than in at some point in the future. So we scrapped all that, we took it all out. So now every sound, ambient sound in PU and Squadron is everything is a point sourced emitted sound. Some are quite big sounds that emit over a wide range, kind of like covering a lot of area, but there's no more 2D cheating basically, and it sounds way better. It sounds phenomenal. So you take 2 steps forward, the entire room sounds different, and that's just it's hard work getting that, but it's just completely worth it. It feels like the real world now, which is so. I mean, we didn't even realize when we started doing it how cool it would sound when we actually did it. So
sweet.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at a problem for one specific thing, you've actually made the game sound a lot better across the board.
Yeah, it's infinitely better now. Yeah.
There's a bit of concern with particles and VR. I've made a prototype of a game with particle effects, but that was just all the particles I did was just dots basically, and that works extremely well. It's so cool to be in there and see particles in a 3D sense. But I think that it might be when we see if you walk into a room now and there's mist there or a big explosion, because all the particles is basically just squares that we project a sequence of frames upon. So it might be that I'm a tiny bit worried that you would be able to pick out those flat stuff, that they would stick out, like, okay, I can see that explosion fireball is flat now. So that might be something that we need to come up with something funky to solve. Yeah.
Cool. With again more aliens coming in, how are you dealing with alien communication in the game? Obviously, there's different languages that you guys are coming up with for the different races. How is that going to be communicated with the player? Is that just going to be auto-translated, or is that going to be text through mobiGlas, or how are you dealing with those issues of alien communication?
I can't address that. I know nothing about that. We have a sort of a sub-team of dedicated dialogue guys, and this would be a wonderful question for them. Anything I say would be utter conjecture. so let's not just have me up here guessing. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't.
Let's see. It kind of bombs out my follow-up question. I think we'll move to questions from the audience. Hands up for a question. And hopefully we'll also try and get a question or two from Twitch as well. You guys got some good ones?
Off the back of it. Cool, thanks. I'd like to know what the next big technical issue you're going to be working on is that you can talk about. What's the next big thing you're working on that you can talk about?
I mean, I think from a company as a whole, one of the next big technical, and this is kind of the underlying tech, is the object container streaming. So at the moment, if you look at a map like Crusader, it's just one big map. That's, as you probably can tell, we're coming up to the limitations of, what we can do in just one big map. So the object container streaming will allow us to actually start creating the universe. So rather than having everything all in memory all at once, you just you start off at a space station, Port Olisar. That's an object container in itself, and then you quantum travel to a moon. Port Olisar will get unloaded, and the moon, that object container will then sort of in the background just stream in magically, and then you get there and sort of play the game there. And it just means you've got the the memory requirements aren't as high, and also it helps with performance because all the space station, all the stuff that's in the space station just disappears as well, so you don't have to worry about it, don't have to update it or anything like that. And it just means it will get some performance back as well, and it's kind of a fairly fundamental side of it, which we're going to need for Squadron 42 as well. So as you go around the Squadron 42 universe, again we're going to need all this object container streaming as well. So that's kind of what I would say was the next big thing. I mean, we're obviously doing a lot of work on the planetary tech. That's something that we're very excited about. So that's one of the big tech challenges. And I think that's
From the tech design point of view, we do have a big refactor of the item system coming pretty soon, or as soon as we can have it, and that makes a big difference, or will make a big difference. We've been wanting that for quite a while, so you can start. Brings in a lot of that fidelity that we haven't really got to with the ships, where you've got your power generator, you've got your shield generator, you've got all these different systems interacting, talking to each other. One goes out, the other one compensates. All of that stuff that we've worked around or done the best we can with the systems we had, and when that pretty soon will be finished and done, we'll be able to make a huge difference. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah. Special effects wise, one thing that Caleb in Germany is working very hard on is to create a procedural system for having like type of environment and weather effects for planets. Not so sure about the weather thing, so don't quote me on that. But we can't go to each planet and place these effects manually, so we have to have a procedural system that makes sense. So like, we will have mosquitoes over water and like winds coming out up of like ridges and stuff like that. So all I know really is that it's very complicated, but we're getting there. Yeah.
I guess for music systems, I've been working with the coder Sam Hall. We've it's very difficult because we want to provide like a nice cinematic musical backdrop in the PU. But it's difficult reading player intentions, obviously, because we could have nice, happy music playing, and then some guy comes and shoots you in the head, and you just didn't see that happening. It doesn't feel very filmic when there was no read of that situation. So, or at least, I mean, we'll never be able to predict the things that you guys do because you're crazy. But we can try our best. So we're at least we're trying some new systems like. Anybody with a wanted level, we want to change the ambient music to an ambient tension music where it's not action music, but we want to give the sense of something dangerous is happening. But then again, if you're in the middle of a station and you're not doing anything, but some guy's landed outside with a wanted level, it feels weird if suddenly, you were having a nice time, suddenly it's dun 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 dun. What the hell's going on? So we were trying to figure out some kind of system of like line of sight combined with intention. It's very, I mean, with AI, it's fine. We know what AI wants to do to you, to kill you, mostly, obviously. But with human players, reading intention is difficult. So we're building this new system now and trying it internally just to get some balance on it. But hopefully, if some guy is arriving and then you see him, we can have a nice sting, and then the music that was kind of ambient and happy will get a little darker before it gets into action. It's just kind of a nice cinematic smoothing up to the point where the music's all crazy action music, so it's not too jarring when you get shot in the head.
Cool. Another one from the audience, and then we'll take 2 from Twitch real quick.
Just a quick question, please. With display technology improving, can we anticipate HDR support of the game?
So last time I talked with Ali, who's our graphics sort of engine director, it's something that they've thought about. It will require quite a large amount of sort of re-engineering work. So it's not something that is on the sort of near-term sort of roadmap. But hopefully it's something we can support sort of longer term. But he was saying it's not a trivial thing to sort of put into the engine. So so it's something that is being looked at. But it's not going to be any time in the near future.
And Twitch question. Taking my mic over.
Hello. So with progress on the PU, question for Andy. From a balance design perspective, what problem are you running into with balancing the constellation? It's been quite a point of discussion so far, so it must have its unique challenges.
The biggest problem with the constellation is the amount of missiles it has. I mean, that thing is just a huge ship with missiles. It's got nearly 40 missiles on it. That leaves me scratching my head a lot of how you begin to balance something like that. Because its size means it's going to last long in a fight. We've made it a bit slower. We've made it a bit harder to get around in to try and limit some of that missile spam from it. A lot of people then believe that a lot of people think that it should fly like the Millennium Falcon, and I hear that a lot. Right? But what does that really mean? It should look cool when it moves. I guess. Yeah.
Judging from the latest movie, it spins around a lot as well.
Well, the constellation is really good at spinning around, so I think we've hit that note. It is a challenge. I think removing some of its offensive power in those missiles is one of those things that's really on my agenda to do. Missiles in general are a big problem that we're aware of, that we've I think we need to rebalance all of the damage levels on those things. But we were just quite pleased that they've started working again, to the point that you can evade them, that you can get some quite interesting gameplay from dodging them or using cutting engines and all that stuff. Yeah. The Constellation is going to be an ongoing challenge, but it is going to be that ship, I think, that forms the basis for all the others in that size class. We'll figure it out.
Okay, we've got another one for you as well.
Oh.
There've been a lot of balance passes on the ships for the PU. How significantly do you think the addition of Item 2.0 ship components and customization will affect that balancing effort?
It's going to be huge, and when it comes to just knowing all these different items on all the different ships, how they affect, for instance, the shield generators, how they're gonna. It's going to take a long time to figure all this out. I think in some ways we want to simplify some of the complicated ways these items interact with each other. Like you lose this part, you lose this item, and you lose all power to this part of the ship. Blah blah blah. But it's going to have to be a rebalance of all these items, a rebalance of all the ships to make sure that they don't have all these weaknesses. So yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it actually, because it's the one of the big things that the game has sold is this level of fidelity with the ships, and we're going to get it, and it's going to be a huge headache to get it right, and it's going to be ongoing, but it's exciting that it's finally ready to go.
Cool.
That's all the questions from Twitch.
Cool. That's all we've got time for. We're going to take a short break before we set up for our final fight on the dogfight. Now, we've had a few technical issues, so we're going to be recording it with the camera and showing the stream on here. We're only able to get one side of it, mostly because we've had a complete network meltdown here. So I'm surprised we've even got a stream, so it's all good. So we're going to have that, and then we're also going to have the raffle as well. So you'll have your prizes, and then we will close and go to the pub. So round of applause for our dev panel.